And I'm your session chair for this afternoon. And in this session we start our symposium. So we have 3 talks, one after the other. If the speakers are fast in their presentation, we can have 1 or 2 questions. If they take the whole time, we postpone questions till the end of the session or to the poster session that will be tomorrow. Wednesday. On Wednesday, yeah. Okay, so let's start with the first talk. It's on MUSE. We have heard the MUSE method, heard about the MUSE method before. And the speaker are Johanna Barzen and Hentschel. So he's from the Institute in Cologne, and they will present us the MUSE methodology applied to musicology. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Do I need the microphone? Can you hear me? Okay, I need it now. Yes, I'm a little bit exotic here as a musicologist, and I've not really any knowledge about informatics. That's why I'm doing work together with Frank Leimer, who has the knowledge. And I'm starting the paper just in order to explain to you why and in what sense a musicologist may need the help of informatics. Our paper has 3 parts, as you can see. First, this is my part. I'm explaining to you the idea of expression types and why we need informatics. And in the second part, Johanna will explain to you how the idea of MUSE4Music may help. And then there will be a conclusion. The idea of expression types is an idea that came up in my work before I knew Frank Leimer, and anything what is associated with Frank Leimer in my mind, the entire pattern research, but also the concrete possibility of using informatics for music analysis. The kind of music analysis that I'm trying to do is an analysis which is not the typical way of analyzing music as musicologists are used to. But I'm focusing on the emotional quality of music. And for me, as historical musicologist, the problem is, of course, that if I'm dealing with, for example, 19th century music, I cannot have any test persons that I could use to find out what kind of feeling the music arouses when they listen to their music. Yet, we know that the music in 19th century was considered as a medium with very strong expressive output or effects. And I just give you this caricatures by Wilhelm Busch, who you can very good see here that there are three elements: a listener, a musician, and the instrument or the music. And you can see how the interpret in his face imitates what he thinks that the music expresses, and the same or a similar expression you can see in the face of the listener. So there's a communication process supposed here which has to do with the expressive qualities of the music. I just use these caricatures as also as historical evidence. It seems to go without saying that music arouses feelings, but there are actually positions in musicology who deny this. But I rely on this historic evidence that this actually goes without saying. Music in the 19th century is a very huge topic, so to deal with this material seriously, you have to limit, of course, focus. And there's another important aspect in 19th century music. I've been dealing with this a little bit Namely the question, why has music become so loud in 19th century music? And so this is just a decision we made. We are dealing with passages of loud music in 19th century. Also here you can see contemporaries realized that loudness of 19th century music was something very specific and also sometimes very extreme in 19th century. On the left side you see Hector Berlioz conducting an orchestra, and there's the tube, and beneath the tube in the same color there's a cannon, which is a symbol of the noise and also the violence of the music of Berlioz. The same is true for Richard Wagner on the right side, who's with a hammer working on a listener's ear. So loudness was very present. And I'll also give you an oral example for your ears of loudness. Which makes really a whole difference. But the point I wanted to make is that there are very different types of loud music in the 19th century. When I started to deal with loudness in 19th century music, I really lost my orientation because everything seemed to be very individual, very different from others, from other examples. So the question is, how do we get some order into this tangled mass of loud music passages? The bigger problem is what I already hinted at. How do we know what people in the 19th century really felt when listening to this kind of music? What I found out, or what rather the idea I got, was that it seemed to be possible to extract something like expressive types that although every single piece is an individual, of course, you can build certain groups of individual pieces or individual passages that share presumably expressive qualities. These types of expressive qualities is what we call types of musical expression or the like. Examples might be the hymnic, the dreadful, the joyous, the martial, the festive, the shocking, anger, resoluteness, and probably many more, which we would have to find out. This has two advantages to establish such types of musical expression. The first is we can assign the individual passages two types, so we get the order we need. And second, the most important advantage is that we can deal with a bigger historical or historiographical problem, namely the fact that we cannot ask 19th century listeners what they felt. Because there are here and there single source evidence of some contemporary listener who said, by listening to this piece by Berlioz or whomever, I felt like this or that. And if we find such source evidence, and at the same time we build such expressive types, we are able to use this source evidence for more pieces than just the one single piece that the person was referring to. So we hope to broaden the horizon of sources, or let the single source evidence speak to more pieces than they explicitly do. Still at this point in my research I didn't know about the pattern research, but we realized at some point when I got to know Frank Simon that the idea of an expressive type, the idea of a type and the idea of patterns have certain rather strong similarities, and that's where we started to cooperate. But still before that, I started to work on one of those presumed expressive types that I call the hymnic. And here again I would like to give you a music example of three pieces that I would consider the hymnic, so that in comparison to the medley before that, you get an idea of how a medley of pieces that I would consider belonging to one type sounds like. Again. These examples stem from a time of about, or from a time span of about 80 years. So one can also see that these expressive types had a long life sometimes, which is very interesting for the historical interpretation of those historical types. While there are some presumed types which are very different to others, there are some types which are very similar to each other. And of course, these are always ideal types, so we cannot ask what objectively really makes the difference between some two types, for example. But there's always a little bit historical reconstruction in the play. And I would like to illustrate this with another type that I call the choral type, which is pretty similar to the hymnic. But what I want to show you in the end is how complicated it is to figure out the musical features that really make the difference between those possible types. And this is, of course, where the computer comes into play, that makes it possible to overview many, many more features that I can do in person. So here's what by now I consider the choral type. Try to get those loud as I say that. On the next page, you're not supposed to be able to read anything, but I just want to show you, this is what I could do as a person with a couple of pieces, like, I'm not exactly sure, maybe 40 pieces. This is just a selection, and I have one row on the top where I have some musical features, and in the table itself I say yes, the feature is there, or it's not there, or something in between. So I have an overview about which features there are, and it really helped to make the difference between what I consider the choral type and the hymnic. But in fact, although it looks quite a lot of features, once we started to make an ontology of musical features that we should describe, we realized that this is just a small percentage of the musical features we would need to describe to get much more information about those musical passages. That's the point where Johanna Barzen and the computer science come to play.
So, thank you very much. We've got now the whole scope of the problems there are. Now we want to come to our solution actually. We want to come to our vision for music, how can we solve this problem. And as you can see the title already, it has got MUSE in it again, and just to recap, in the morning I already introduced our MUSE method. That is observation, data capturing, data analysis and formalization. Just very simple, and as I said already, we now want to use this method to help musicologists in their historical interpretation to gain new insights on how these expression types to work in the music we're looking at, in music from the 19th century. Our Musicology idea actually has got 3 phases, and this is where we want to, or the major goal at least, is to find or to detect some music patterns that are related to their emotion. They're related to some emotions like joy or anger, and this is a semi-automated process. The first step, or the first phase, is to detect the musical characteristics. This is what Frank already said. There are a lot of musical characteristics we need to detect, and it starts with an automated step, and then we need a manual task to go over the characteristics again. The second phase is actually the core part, the pattern identification. Of course, now the musical characteristics need to be analyzed, and they need to be interpreted. So it has got an automatic part and a manual task as well. And the third phase, and this is going beyond what I showed in MUSE in the morning already, we now want to match the patterns we have found or we have identified, which are stored in all their characteristics, to to MUSE scores we didn't look at the beginning, but who are annotated already with their characteristics in phase 1, and to find new concrete solutions to a pattern, to find new pieces where you didn't think before that these patterns may occur, and you can use this now for a continuous growing corpus to get more insights on these expression types. I want to now go in more detail to all of the phases of Musicology and to guide you through the components we have got in mind. So the central part actually of our vision is of course a music corpus. Here all the audio files and scores are stored, and they now need to be enriched by all the characteristics we are looking for. So these pieces in the first component get analyzed by our component called Music Analyzer. This is actually built, you think of a framework with a plugin mechanism where all the tools that are already available for music analysis are used. It's like Photoscore or Melodic Mesh, there are a lot of tools that are available. We want to integrate them to use them as a first analysis phase. Of course, we have to define what we are looking for. So this is some of the this is actually what we're currently working on. We have to define our terminology and we have to structure what we're looking for. So we did build already glossaries, taxonomies, and ontologies of the characteristics, which have to be defined when we want to describe a musical piece in detail. We need to have information about rhythmics, about dynamics, about instrumentation, and so on. So this is quite big. And after the music analyzer, as I said, there has to be a manual task. Musicology has to look at how good are the findings from the tools, and there are a lot of things the tools can't recognize yet, like complex harmonics. They are not at that advanced state yet. And after they have been verified, after the quality has been checked, they then get stored as annotated scores or audio files again in our central corpus. As I said already, we've started with the taxonomies already. This is in German again, since our research is done in German. You need information about harmonics, about instrumentation, rhythmics, and just to give you an idea of, there are a lot of different instruments, for example, already. And you can see this is quite complex and can't be done as normally research is done by hand by one person who's looking at the piece. So now we've got the annotated scores. And in the second case now we want to detect the patterns. We of course have to analyze these annotated scores. And this is what our data mining component actually does. We can use techniques like clustering, for example, to find similarities, to find characteristics that occur frequently and group them together. This is where the equivalent classes we explained in the formulation this morning come into account again. And these findings are not always meaningful. So in the next step, we again need a musicology who looks at this finding and interprets them if they are meaningful or not. And he doesn't only have to interpret it, he also has to find if they are really useful for what we are looking for. He has to do the interpretation, and historical interpretation. He has to do what we call historical reading, actually, to define those similarities, those musical pieces that are similar. Do they really have an effect on expression? So we have to define here the expression types, our patterns that have got a certain expression. And they are then stored in our music pattern database. The musicology here has to do actually a few things. He, of course, has to interpret the findings. He has to write them down in the pattern format. As we've seen, the pattern format always has got a picture, has got a description, context, and so on. And he also has to add a formal description of the characteristics. And this is very important for our third phase, actually, for the pattern matching. Now, this formalized, the formally described pattern characteristics of each pattern can be matched again to scores that have been looked at actually see next to a huge amount of data where we can, which is wasn't possible to analyze before. We want to somehow get a little bit more control of the historian subjectivity. It is normally you've got a lot of expectation, assumptions, experience as in musicology, and all this is influencing how we do research. By using data mining techniques, for example, we can now find some new assumptions that we didn't expect maybe. And with our querying of these assumptions, we can verify new ones. So maybe it's not that strong anymore. It's not a self-fulfilling prophecy anymore. We can now find some new ways. And also this detection of new concrete solutions, of course, is very helpful in research. We are limited somehow a little bit since we only focus on a very small part of the music pieces, we only focus on the rock music. And of course there's a huge amount we can't fulfill all of them, we can't work on all of these, we can work on much more than we work on. And one of the other limitations, of course, the tools for the analysis are still rather poor, so they need to be improved, and we hope to improve them by bringing together different tools. This is what we want to do, and thank you very much for your attention.
Any question? Yeah.
I have a question regarding the starting point for the pattern and its typical situations. Did you think about all this theoretical music literature, what to do with when changing from major to minor, when to introduce brass over violins and things like that? There are a lot of books and theory on how to compose some specific style. That would be a good starting point for finding typical things for a choral, for a hymn or whatever.
Yeah, of course. Well, yes, there's a couple of source evidence or source types we can use. Music theoretical literature would be one. I think in 19th century, music theoretical literature, in a more narrow sense, like literature about harmonics, counterpoint, and so on, they are not very specific about the expressive qualities the music has. They are very technical. But if you look at reviews, for example, or also the vocal text, of course, if there is a music with the vocal text, you get next, or if you can use the text. If you have program music that comes with the program, you can, like Berlioz's Symphony Fantastique, you can, so there are very many different kinds of sources. Most of them aren't, unfortunately, so specific and precise and not so explicit about the emotions. We would like to know that although there's a lot of source material, the source evidence for our question is still very narrow. So that's why we are looking for methods to make more.
Daniela.
So have you thought about asking current people how they feel when they listen to that music, like having a social web service where you can listen to a piece of music and you're asked, what do you feel? So like crowdsourcing those emotions.
That's something that I, as historian, exclude.
Why?
Because I'm sure that after the development of music in the 20th century, with atonal music, with rock music, and so on, the listening experience, I think still it hasn't changed entirely. But as a historian, I wouldn't rely on that. And I was working on the uncanny in music in the 19th century before that, and many musics that I can show for listeners of 19th century was uncanny. It's not uncanny for us anymore. We are used to the music in the horror film, produced by Penderecki and so on. And since then, the Weber's Freischütz or so isn't really uncanny to us anymore the same. That's why, as an historian, I try to be very exact and exclude contemporary listeners.
Yeah, but maybe the same pattern, so maybe the same pattern would still have a similar reaction, maybe a different reaction, but maybe a similar
you're right.
pattern.
Yes.
Maybe we'll
actually,
see
yes, you're right. In the second step, I would be very interested in comparing whether what we found out very strict historically how much this matches as we are listening to the music. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Okay. No further question for the moment. So thank